side, who is the majority whip. Allow me to also give a chance to my minority whip, Senator Ledama Olekina, to come forth. I donate my time to Senator Ledama Olekina, my minority whip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the minority side, I wish to extend a warm welcome, and I actually join you, to welcoming the distinguished senators and the members of staff from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a country that most of us have read a lot about. It has taught us a lot in terms of leadership, from the worst to the best, in terms of the changes where each African country is going through. Some of us are very happy to see Zimbabwe during the spring period because of the beautiful flowers all over. There are some beautiful pictures which are taken, and when you are told that's an African country, you see how clean it is, and we like to emulate. We have a lot to share as brothers, and I do hope that one day this African continent will become one country so that we can take pride of all the resources that we have. Some of the big challenges that we're going through as a country, and I'm happy because I'm speaking to leaders like us, is on the issue of the GDP, debt to GDP ratio in each of the African countries. I think it's about time that we all think and look inside our hearts and ask ourselves tough questions. Why is it that every time when we travel and we go to the West, we see countries which are clean, countries which the citizens come together to be able to build that country, but we in Africa, Kenya and Zimbabwe alike, we spend most of our time destroying our country, robbing it, denying citizens who elect us to come here basic services. So as you visit, I want, when you go back to Zimbabwe, to tell your people in Zimbabwe that in Africa, in Kenya today, we're asking very tough questions about the future generations. Are we going to leave this African continent better than we found it? Or are we also going to follow the trajectory of those who came before us and who decided to line their pockets? I welcome you and enjoy your visit in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Is the Honorable Senator Karungo Thagwa here? He had a petition to present. That petition is deferred. Honorable Senators, I hereby report that a petition has been submitted to the Senate by Ms. Ruth Kabui and other P1 teachers concerning salary arrears for P1 teachers with A-level academic qualifications from 1996 to 2010. As you're aware, under Article 1191 of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." Honorable Senators, the silent issues raised in the petition are as follows: that in July 1996, the then Directorate of Personnel Management of the Teacher Service Commission issued a scheme of service for non-graduate teachers, given the requirements for appointment and promotion for non-graduate teachers. The said schemes were implemented by the Commission, after which an attendant regrading was required. That in July 1996, the then Minister of Education, Science and Technology, through the Chief Inspector of Schools, requested all district education officers, municipal education officers, and City Director of Education to submit the names of trained primary school teachers one P1 with A-level academic qualifications countrywide to the ministry. That thereafter, the ministry proceeded to grade and trained A-level teachers who had attended a 2-week program at Kagumo and Bondo Teachers Training colleges to secondary school teachers 1, that is S1, locking other A-level primary school teachers P1 who had not attended the course. This resulted to complaints by the primary school teachers, P1 A-level trained teachers. That another group of approved teachers, ATS-1V, were also promoted in the year 1996. The then scheme of service for non-graduate teachers stipulated that the existing secondary school teachers, that is S1, promoted to primary school teachers P1, were to convert to approved teachers 4, while teachers with diploma certificate will convert to diploma teachers. And additionally, in July 2010, the primary school teachers P1 were also promoted but were not issued with promotion letters. That the teachers who were promoted in the year 1996 are yet to receive their salary arrears since the date of promotion, which is contrary to standard labor practices. And that the petitioners have made efforts to have this matter addressed by the relevant authorities, and all of which have failed to give a satisfactory response. The petitioners, therefore, pray to the Senate that it intervenes in this matter with a view to recommending to the National Treasury and Economic Planning to factor in budget to enable payment of salary arrears to the teachers. Now, honorable senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observations, and clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Honorable senators, you may walk in. Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this very, very important petition. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is clear that any Kenyan who thinks he has a matter which is unresolved can bring it to Parliament, which includes Senate. And these teachers have walked a long journey. They have been trying to make these particular claims over a long, long time. They have gone into different government departments. I did not find the necessary assistance they were looking for. And I believe Senate, the committee dealing with education, and also Senate as a whole, has the power given to it by the Constitution to resolve this matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there has been many issues dealing with the teachers, and teachers are very, very important, you know, from the nursery school teacher to the primary school teacher to the secondary school teacher. There was rationalization of the P1 and the S1. And even we have a lot of teachers who have become graduates, who have pursued a degree, you know, privately, and are now qualified. But unfortunately, the salary is not commensurate to what the teacher is qualified for. So I believe a scheme of service for all these teachers can be polished, can be reconsidered, and with public participation or by consulting the relevant bodies dealing with the teachers. This is NAT and the stakeholders in the education sector, and also experts in the area of remuneration, and people dealing with that particular expertise have an opportunity. Even when this particular petition has been presented, the presenters, together with other interested Kenyans, can approach the committee, and ordinarily the practice is that they are able to input to the committee, and the committee is able to serve Kenyans better. So I believe all teachers should be treated fairly. The Constitution requires that there is fair and equal treatment to every Kenyan, so that whatever they have worked for can be paid to them, and they can continue with the good work of educating the country. Mr. Speaker, I'm personally a product of teachers, and very kind teachers in Makueni, and I believe a teacher is so important that we leave them with our children and they polish them They teach them how to be better Kenyans. They teach them the national anthem at a very early age, the Eastern African anthem. And it is through the hands of many teachers these students proceed to high school and even to university and end up even in this Senate. So I really pray and support that these teachers be given what is rightful to them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okanyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this petition by one Ruth. And I think it's so many years down the line for these teachers to actually be compensated. From 1996 to 2010, that's a very long time, and I know there must have been very many attempts trying to intervene on behalf of these teachers. The other time we were actually discussing on teachers who had marked the examinations, who are yet to even be compensated, while we've had the students who performed well report to schools, and life has definitely moved on as usual. So while I share their frustrations, I really feel we need to accord not just teachers, but there are so many other professionals who volunteer their service to this country, and such might actually demoralize other young people who aspire to join these professions. I'm a product of these teachers way from my village in Kenyenya, and it is as a result of the efforts that those teachers put that I can represent other young people who aspire to be leaders of this country in this honorable house. So, Mr. Speaker, I join other senators in supporting this petition, and that it actually deserves the attention it requires. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Isaboy.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kunipa fursa hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii petition imekuja wakati mzuri sana kwa sababu kwangu mimi katika kaunti ya Kwale nina kesi nyingi sana za walimu kama hawa ambao hawajalipwa pesa zao. Ni jambo la kusikitisha sana, hasa kwa walimu. Walimu wamesomesha wanafunzi wamefaulu, lakini utakuta kwamba walimu mpaka leo wanalia wanataka kulipwa pesa zao. Hata sijui shida bwana Spika, shida iko wapi? Mimi nina kesi karibu 5 sahihi, karibu 5 za walimu. Wengine karibu wawili wameshafariki. Kuna mwingine juzi alipata ajali. Hata sijui shida iko wapi katika serikali. Kwa nini Mheshimiwa Spika, hii wizara au hii tume ya PSC kwa nini hawalipi wanafunzi hao? Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga sana ni statement ambayo imeletwa petition hii wakati huu, na lazima tuhakikishe sisi maseneta tuweze kusimama imara, hao walimu waweze kulipwa kwa wakati wake. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga sana petition hii, na hiyo komiti ambayo utaagizia mheshimiwa ichunguze basi ifanye kwa haraka sana, kwa sababu it's all over county, si Kwale peke yake, hata Mombasa, ukisikia Kilifi, walimu wananungunika kwa sababu pesa zao. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi na support sana hii petition hii. Thank you very much.
Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to join the rest of the members to say that I support the petition. Honorable Speakers, teachers go through a lot of problems. Just the other week, we were discussing a matter here involving the non-payment of to the teachers who had marked exams. It's taken too long, and now this issue of P1 teachers, Mr. Speaker, is an issue that is affecting most of our counties. I think TSC should take charge and resolve these issues. Mr. Speaker, I was just discussing with my colleague here, Senator Mtata, on the matter of implementation of the resolutions of this petition. We have had so many issues touching on teachers, which have been processed either in the National Assembly or here. But the TSC has had nothing, it has seen nothing, and it has not acted. I know in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, they passed a motion against the delocalization policy. Mr. Speaker, I can say that up to now, the TSC has not moved in to resolve that problem of delocalization. And even this, Mr. Speaker, I am sure TSC will not move in with speed to deal with this problem of non-payment to the P1 teachers. I think something has to be done. I know TSC keeps on saying there are independent commission, but this House, Mr. Speaker, has the powers to deal with matters concerning the people of Kenya. And one of it is issues touching on teachers. So the TSC CEO, Madam Nancy Macharia, he is so powerful, Mr. Speaker, that you can even go to his office and he decides not to see you. We have gone there so many times. You sit in the waiting room for hours, and she cannot see you, and then eventually she sends the PA to come and see you. Mr. Speaker, it is a high time that this country gets rid of state officers who behave larger than life, like Nancy Macharia. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to support the motion and the statement that actually what is happening in TSC is actually a very, very unfortunate situation. That many teachers are having a lot of problems. Teachers actually are the people who work in every corner of this country. They work in the worst conditions. They work in the most square areas. However, they are not given what they deserve to be given as teachers. Mr. Speaker, TSC has become an entity of its own. TSC actually, the CEO is unapproachable. That if anybody has a problem, even getting hearing is a problem. So I think it's high time that we need to sort these problems. Teachers are actually are the backbone of this country. They develop all kind of human resource. And therefore, we need to at least give attention to various issues that are affecting. Even the pension actually are getting problems these days. Their salaries have been delayed. They have been posted haphazardly without any due consideration for teachers. With those few remarks, I beg to support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mudama Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join the rest of the senators to support this petition by Ruth. Mr. Speaker, this issue of teachers retiring and not even getting their benefits, it's not only with Ruth. I don't know which county she comes from, but it is across all the counties in Kenya. And it is so sad to hear and to know that from 1996 to date, there are people who are still waiting for their compensation and their retirement benefits. Mr. Speaker, it's very sad because NAT is there and they should be mindful of the welfare of the teachers. And KUPPET is also there, Mr. Speaker. RBA, Retirement Benefits Authority, is also there, which should be really concerned about the retirement benefits of the teachers. Mr. Speaker, all of us, when we work, we want, once we retire, to get our benefits so that we can continue with life. And these teachers, from 1996 to date, those are many, many years when they are still waiting for their benefits. And I'm sure majority of them has already died while waiting for their benefits so that they can continue with life. And they face a lot of challenges. Mr. Speaker, it's my prayer and my hope that where this petition is taken to the Committee of Education, they will deal with it very urgently. And I'm sure with the leadership of the able chair, Senator Nyutu, will be able to deal with this, and these teachers must be compensated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is one of those petitions that makes me wonder what it is that we do in this country. You take teachers, you say, let us educate them, let us put them through a training. You increase their salaries. 27 years after, they are still crying that those increments they are yet to receive. What exactly are we doing, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this is an issue which, when you read the petition, you wonder whether we represent the people we say we represent. My views are a little bit unorthodox when it comes to issues to do with personal welfare. Why is it that we ourselves here as leaders, whenever we are promised an increment, every year, all of us here as leaders, we get some form of a salary increment? Why is it that that is never delayed and not paid? The day you delay a member of parliament increment is the day they'll shut down the country. Why can't we treat the teachers, who are the ones who educated us and gave us the wisdom for us to come here and represent them? Mr. Speaker, this does not even ought to become a petition, because one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to issues of petitions is that, okay, we are here, any member by the Constitution can be able to present a petition to this House, but what happened after that? We interrogate the matter, we call those people, and then after that, we take our findings and we hand over the findings to the petitioner. How is it going to help them? Mr. Speaker, I'd like to beseech you to handle this thing differently, because this is another crisis we have, similar to the one of former councillors who served this country diligently, and while current members of the county assemblies are getting a gratuity or pension, those ones were forgotten. Every so often, we talk about budget. We know the Senate doesn't deal with the issue of budget. I wish our colleagues in the lower house would be able to, so moto, take on this matter and add that budget there and reduce all these budgets of tea, budgets of travel, and at least pay these teachers from 1996, 27 years ago. In fact, the distinguished senator nominated, who is looking at me, Tabitha, was not born then. And now, look at her. She's serving this House, representing those teachers. And their salaries increment, they have not been paid until today. What exactly are we doing here? I want to call upon the commissioners, the TSC commissioners, led by my good friend Nancy. Please, this is about time that you need to now ask yourself what it is that you're doing in that office. And I want to call upon my colleagues in the lower house. We'll be talking about budget. And the only thing which is in our head right now, which is going to divide this country into two, is the issue of the finance bill, which is going to tax those people again. A basic salary of a teacher, Mr. Speaker, is 27,000 shillings to 30,000 shillings. What is 27,000 shillings in this country? That's a teacher who has made even the current occupier of the house in the hill to be there. I think, Mr. Speaker, these are issues which are not only emotive, but they are things which must separate leaders from followers. There are things which must separate us, this House now. You know, some of these things, Mr. Speaker, if you tell me that you will amend our standing order so that we can call those commissioners here, I'll agree. I'll agree for them to come here, and by the time they're walking out of this place, we have a resolution. Mr. Speaker, I dare say if you look at the budget of the Ministry of Education, and yet some of these teachers here who are promoted, we no longer have something called P1. There's no P1 anymore. I think it's called what? Grade what? If you look at the budget of the Ministry of Education, just like the Ministry of Health, you'll be shocked. The amount of money they get, yet some of these services are devolved. Then why don't we ask ourselves tough questions now, Mr. Speaker? That when we are talking about amending the Constitution or bringing changes, why don't we then devolve education fully, entirely, like other countries? There are other jurisdictions where it's a school district that has to care about the salaries, the benefits of teachers. We are in a very, very tough year. This year, cost of sugar will be more than the cost of a bag of cement. And if we don't even fight to increase this little money, and it's little money, compared to the amount of money we waste. We waste a lot of money. We employ CASs. We give them a lot of money. We fight in courts. If you take a budget of those CASs, you'll send that money to these teachers. I think it's about time that we become our real brothers' keepers and we fight for them. Mr. Speaker, I want to request that when you give instructions and you commit this petition to the Committee on Education, you know, I know the standing order says 60 days, but Mr. Speaker, let them give us a status update on actually what is happening. So that this year, you know, earlier on when we were sitting at the House Business, we were very happy with the work that the distinguished senators, women in this House, members of KEOPA, are doing. You know, those are things that have got results, and we commend them when they do that. You know, they went with the support of your office, Mr. Speaker, the support of the Secretariat. They went to our prisons. They paid fees, you know, penalty, what are they called? Fines. They paid fines for petty offenders. That is commendable. Now, the same spirit, and I want to request the same leaders, Senator Hamida, thank you very much, my dear sister, as a chair, take on this, because they are teachers, they are mothers. Most teachers here are mothers. Take on this issue, walk to Nancy's office, and ensure that at least they give them. If there is anything that I'll be happy, increase my tax to pay these teachers, do it. But don't increase my tax to pay some form of housing allowance. If you cannot even pay those teachers their increment, how are you going to be able to give them this house? Come on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to address this matter. I rise to support this petition by Ruth Kafue. Mr. Speaker, I also want to give my assurance that as a Committee of Education, we are committed to the matters that affect teachers and schools in general, Mr. Speaker. And only last week, we were able, Mr. Speaker, to win one battle that we have been fighting for teachers who retired between 1997 and 2003, Mr. Speaker. And in this war, Mr. Speaker, what we came to learn was the problem, was that the benefit scheme for public servants is not contributory, at least up to those, but I think it has started being contributory now. So that now, Mr. Speaker, when it is time to pay teachers or civil servants their salary, their benefits, then money has to be drawn from the consolidated fund. But unlike NSSF, where employees contribute and therefore their money is set aside, Mr. Speaker, that has been the problem. As for these teachers that had A-level qualifications, Mr. Speaker, and for the benefit of those who may not understand, like the one we have been just told by Senator Ledama was born 27 years ago, this was advanced level education, Mr. Speaker. These are teachers, these are people that had taken another examination after a Form 4 examination for the benefit of those that then came just the other day. And this was an extra qualification, Mr. Speaker, so that somebody was still able to train as a P1 teacher after Form 4. But these are teachers, these are people who had chosen to get into another level of education, advanced level, before they trained as teachers. And so that sacrifice that they made, Mr. Speaker, of going to school again for 2 years, and then becoming P1s just like those that had trained as P1 teachers after Form 4, this is something that should be respected, Mr. Speaker. And that is why these arrears must be paid the soonest possible. I want to assure this House that my committee is able and willing to prosecute this matter. And although Senator Ledama has left, I had wanted to assure him that the Committee of Education is able to deal with this matter, that we may not have to go to deal with it through the women parliamentarians in this House. So, Mr. Speaker, if anybody was casting aspersions on the ability of the Committee on Education, I want to assure all and sundry that we are capable. And should we need the help of women parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, we have them. Senator Kavindu is there, Senator Professor Kamar, who is a very experienced educationist, is there. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are equal to the task, and we are going to prosecute this matter. We are going to call or invite those that are responsible, TSC, Treasury, and all that are responsible. So I want to assure Ruth, wherever she is, that this is a matter that if and when you refer it to us, Mr. Speaker, we are going to deal with it in the best way we can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity.
Honorable Senators, the time allocated for intervention to this petition is well spent, and therefore, pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Education. And in terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. It is so directed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I hereby wish to present this petition, which has been submitted to the Senate by Mr. Francis Wainaina Njogona on behalf of Bogo's Family Welfare Group of Mbare ya Bogo, concerning historical injustices and illegal alienation of LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR 1282/5. As you are aware, under Article 119(1) of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." Honorable Speaker, sir, the salient issues raised in these petitions are: A, that Kasarini Estate Company Limited, occupying the land LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR 128/25, was formed in Britain. The estate occupied the land as a demonstration farm from 1932, while coexisting with the original owner, Mbogo Wainaina family. That a group of 5 families with 10 members allegedly formed Kasarini Farmers Cooperative Society Limited, which was registered on 10th July 1974 in a bid to illegally acquire the Kasarani Estate Company Limited land. That Kasarini's Farmers Cooperative Society Limited certificate was disowned by the Commissioners of Cooperative Development in response to an inquiry by the National Land Commission. Despite the Commissioner of Cooperative Development disowning Kasarani Farmers Cooperative Society Limited, the society was issued with a title on the said land on 18th December 1981. D, that Kasarini Farmers Cooperative Society Limited have since purported to have bought the land from Kasarini Estate Company Limited, disregarding the ownership of the land by Mbogo Wenena family. And E, that the petitioners have made efforts to have the matter addressed by the National Land Commission and other relevant authorities, all of which have failed to give a satisfying response. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the petitioner therefore prays that the Senate investigate this matter with a view of establishing the rightful owner of the land LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR number 12825, and recommend that compensation to be rendered to the Bogos family for the historical injustices suffered and damages for the said land. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observation, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want from the onset to support Senator Karungo Wathang'wa that land is an emotive issue, Mr. Speaker. And anybody who is dispossessed of land is not good, because any dispossession of land by anybody should be done within the law, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, and therefore I think it has been horrendous for the family. And as a Senator, and I believe our committees, as one of the chairs of education, has insisted that they have capacity and ability to address, Mr. Speaker, all these issues that have been raised in this petition. Mr. Speaker, it's not lost to us that any part of this country you go at family level, at communal level, there will be always, Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of land grievances. And therefore, I think the biggest is to ensure, Mr. Speaker, everybody has a title deed, Mr. Speaker. And I think the commitment of government has to always have the title. Mr. Speaker, you know, all of us are Africans, unless there are people who are new from Jerusalem, is that when you don't own land from my community where I am, you are not a man, despite having other things, Mr. Speaker. So this is a very important matter that must be dispensed with, Mr. Speaker. And of course, looking at the value, Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying not having a title deed superintends what a man should have, but the bottom line is that it gives you identity, it gives you sense of belonging, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, and therefore you can see even what is happening in South Rift and North Rift, where allegations of tea plucking machines are being burned down, Mr. Speaker, and many others, because of the land. Because the people from where I come, Nandi and Kericho and part of South Rift and North Rift, always have a feeling that they were dispossessed of their rightful ownership of land, Mr. Speaker. And the youthful leaders like Senator Oburu Odinga, Mr. Speaker, have this institutional memory on the history of land struggle, and it forms at the core, at the basis, Mr. Speaker. And I know where Senator Madzayo, retired judge, and yourself comes from, there is still a big challenge in terms of land ownership, land possession, and many others, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think from where I sit, I want to congratulate Senator Karungo Wathang'wa and say this family should be given justice. If it is their right, they have suffered this. And Mr. Speaker, we should celebrate all Kenyans. A few minutes ago, you read about the petition by teachers. Now we have a petition by a member of public. It shows the confidence many Kenyans have for the Senate to address these issues, Mr. Speaker. We have confidence that women from Kewapa, from Senate, can visit a prison, Mr. Speaker, and pay fines and give them food. We also have confidence with the Senate, Mr. Speaker, that we can dispense and address an injustice across anywhere of this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I congratulate Senator Karungo Wathang'wa and support this petition and hope the family will get justice in this matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Lelegwe. Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kusema kwamba naunga mkono dua hii ambayo imeletwa na Mheshimiwa Karungo Wadhangwa. Kwa sababu ya familia ya Mbogo wa Inaina kwa shamba lao kuchukuliwa, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, mambo ya mashamba katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya imekuwa ni doda sugu. Watu wengi wamekuwa wanagandamizwa na wale ambao wanafikiria wako na nguvu kushinda wengine. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nataka kukubaliana na Mheshimiwa Karungo Wadhangwa ya kwamba familia ya Mbogo wa Inaina imefanya vizuri kuleta taarifa hii. Na wamefanya jambo lingine la muhimu kwa kusema ya kwamba wanapatia jukumu kamati ambayo inahusika, na ni kamati ya mashamba na ya mazingira ambayo iko katika seneti hii. Na wana uhakika na wanaamini ya kwamba itaweza kutenda haki. Ndiposa wanasema kulingana na taarifa yenyewe, Bwana Spika, wanasema ya kwamba itafute ni nani mwenye shamba lile kamili. Hawasemi ni lao, hawasemi ni nani, kwa sababu ni watu ambao ni watu wanapenda ukweli. Na wana imani na kamati ya Senate ya kwamba itafanya haki. Na Bwana Spika, mimi ningependa ya kwamba hii familia ya Mbogo wa Inaina itendewe haki. Waweze kupewa fidia kwa yale ambayo wamepitia, kugandamizwa ambao wamepitia, Bwana Spika. Na ni vizuri wakati kamati hiyo inashughulikia jambo hili iangalie, kwa sababu swala hili si hili peke yake katika sehemu hiyo ya Kiambu, Bwana Spika. Ukitembea sehemu nyingi za nchi yetu ya Kenya kuna shida za mashamba, Bwana Spika. Na shida za mashamba, Bwana Spika, inafanya watu mpaka watoane uhai, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuuliza kamati hiyo, wakati inashughulikia swala hili, ishughulikie hata sehemu zingine. Kama ukitembea Laikipia, Bwana Spika, upande wa Marmanet, Bwana Spika, watu walifurushwa kutoka mashamba yao na wanapaswa kupewa fidia, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu za Matanya vile vile kuna lile shida, Bwana Spika. Unapata watu wametolewa katika mashamba yao, wanaishi katika maisha ya uchochole, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo, kwa sababu Wakenya wana imani na kamati na seneti, na hasa kamati hii ambayo inaongozwa na Mheshimiwa Methu, nina hakika watafuatilia lile jambo na waweze kufuatilia kindani, ndio hawa ndugu zetu waache kuwa na hii shida, Bwana Spika, waweze kupewa fidia, Bwana Spika, na waweze kuishi maisha wanayopaswa kuishi. Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu zingine hapa Kenya, tuko na mashamba yetu, lakini hatuwezi tukaishi, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ya kutokuwa na usalama, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo jambo la mashamba, Bwana Spika, limekwenda na sugu. Ukitembea mahali kunaitwa Kimanjo, Ilipolee, uende Dodor, hiyo ndio shida, Bwana Spika. Watu wanapigwa, wanaondolewa. Na jambo kubwa, watu wanapofanya hiyo, Bwana Spika, wanataka kujinyakulia mashamba. Kama vile Mheshimiwa Cherargei alivyosema, Bwana Spika, ati wewe ukiwa Mwafrika huwezi ukaitwa mwanaume kama huna shamba, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo unapata wengine wanatumia nguvu walizonazo kuwagandamiza wengine, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo kamati ambayo itashughulikia jambo hili, kamati ya mashamba na mazingira, iangalie kwa kindani na walete suluhu la kudumu, Bwana Spika. Nashukuru kwa kunipa muda huu.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, 238(1), the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. And in terms of Standing Order 238(2), the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. It is so directed. I thank you. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 23rd May 2023. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Iten Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2020. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Iten Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2021. Reports of the Auditor General for the year ended 30th June 2022 on the financial statement of 1. Iten Municipality, the Makueni County Sand Conservation and Utilization Authority, the Matungulu Kangundo Water and Sewerage Company Limited, the Municipality of Malindi, the Mombasa County Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, the County Executive of Mombasa, the County Assembly of Mombasa, the Kirandich Water Company Limited, the Nakuru Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited, the Nakuru Water and Sanitation Service Company Limited, the Nawasol Company Limited, the Elder Ravine Water and Sewerage Company, the Central Rift Valley Water Works Development Agency, the Receiver of Revenue County Government of Homa Bay, the County Executive of Homa Bay, the County Assembly of Homa Bay, the County Government of Meru Receiver of Revenue, the Meru County Investment and Development Corporation, the Meru Youth Service Board, the Meru County Assembly Members Car Loan and Housing Schemes Fund, the Meru Water and Sewerage Service Registered Trustees, the County Assembly of Meru Staff Car Loan and Housing Schemes Fund, and Kisii County Bursaries Fund. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order, Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Senator Catherine Muma. That notice is deferred. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statement pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, the Honorable Senator Richard Onyonka. That statement is dropped. Senator Richard Onyonka had 2 statements, and those statements are dropped. Senator Raphael Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 statements as well. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources regarding compensation of residents displaced for purposes of expansion of Ukunda Airstrip. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state why the National Land Commission has not compensated residents of Mkwakwani village in Ukunda, Kwale County, whose land was acquired by government for the purposes of expansion of Ukunda Airstrip by the Kenya Airports Authority. And secondly, spell out measures, if any, put in place by the National Land Commission and the Kenya Airports Authority to ensure timely compensation of the residents of Mkwakwani, stating the timelines for compensation. Second statement, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the complete ban on night discos during funerals, commonly known as Disco Matanga, in Kwale County. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state the reasons for the complete ban of Disco Matanga by government in Kwale County without a proper working framework. Number 2, clarify the legal basis for the complete banning of Disco Matanga in Kwale County since January 2022. Number 3, direct the Ministry of Interior and National Administration to develop a practical framework to regulate disco matangas without the associated risks. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, state measures, if any, by the government to ensure that the ban is lifted with immediate effect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Munyehaji Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nimesimama kuunga mkono maombi ya taarifa ya Seneta Chimera kuhusiana na taarifa ya kwanza, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwamba hili swala la wakazi wa Ukunda ambao ardhi zao zilichukuliwa kwa sababu ya ujenzi wa upanuzi wa uwanja wa ndege wa Ukunda ni swala ambalo limekuwa donda sugu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nakumbuka tulizuru mahali hapa mnamo mwaka 2018 tukiwa na kamati ya fedha ikiongozwa na Seneta Kajwang, Mheshimiwa Spika, na wahusika pia walikuja katika bunge hili la Senate kuja kueleza masaibu yanayowapata kwa ucheleshaji wa kulipwa kwa zile ardhi ambazo zimechukuliwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo ni jambo ambalo, Mheshimiwa Spika, limekuwa donda sugu, na naona juzi kiongozi wa serikali alisema kwamba National Land Commission wasijihusishe na mambo ya kutathmini ardhi ambazo zinachukuliwa kwa miradi ya serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hilo ni swala la kwamba tunapita mipaka ya sheria, kwa sababu sheria inasema kwamba masuala ya kutathmini, yani evaluation, ni swala ambalo litafanywa na National Land Commission. Kwa hivyo ikiwa sasa rais wa nchi atasema kwamba ameikataza National Land Commission wakati sheria inaruhusu National Land Commission ifanye kazi hiyo, ina maana kwamba anaingilia kazi za tume huru katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nasema kwamba tunaomba National Land Commission iharakishe ulipaji wa watu hawa na sehemu yote nyingine ambao ardhi zimechukuliwa na watu hawajalipwa walipwe kwa haraka. Lakini tunapinga vikali kauli ya rais kusema kwamba National Land Commission hawataweza tena kutathmini ardhi ambazo zinachukuliwa kwa miradi ya serikali. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also arise to support the statement by our colleague. Mr. Speaker, the compensation by government has been a big challenge in this country. In this particular case, you talk about compensation of those whose land was taken because of the Ukunda airstrip. But Mr. Speaker, you also are aware that there has been compulsory acquisition of pieces of land by Kenha, by Kera, and other institutions of government to build roads, the express highway, the SGR. And Mr. Speaker, there are very many Kenyans. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'm told when you go to Land Commission, National Land Commission, the unpaid compensation is in billions. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans suffer because this is their resource. And sometimes they even plan to utilize the money that are supposed to be compensated from the government. And they indeed suffer, Mr. Speaker, because there is no clear provision of law as to the timelines within which compensation should be actually done by the government. Mr. Speaker, when you acquire land through compulsory acquisition, Mr. Speaker, it means you'll have done the budget for compensation for the purpose. I sometimes, Mr. Speaker, wonder where the money goes, because at the point of acquiring the land, the money is available for compensation. But thereafter, after some time, the money disappears and Kenyans suffer. Mr. Speaker, those of us who have a chance of sometimes representing clients in our institutions like the law firms and so on, Mr. Speaker, we come across these issues. It is true that Kenyans are suffering. Mr. Speaker, even the dams we have today in many parts of the country, billions is applied, and yet the owners of the land on which these dams are built are not compensated. Mr. Speaker, I think this House should rise to the occasion. I think we should come up with clear laws that once government has acquired land through compulsory acquisition, then within a specified period of time, those people should be compensated so that we don't leave it open for the government to pay as and when, Mr. Speaker, they wish to, because Kenyans are suffering. So, Mr. Speaker, I really support this, and I think it is an issue that should be able to apply across the country. I want to appeal, and Mr. Speaker, I am a member of this committee, and I think when the issue will come to the committee responsible, we are going to also take up the issue and perhaps expand it to cover other areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Akinyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the statement by Senator Raphael about the compensation of residents displaced by the expansion of Ukunda airstrip. Mr. Speaker, the issue of compensation, as my colleagues have stated, is a thorny in this country. Mr. Speaker, when the National Land Commission, Kenyans aired their views that there should be a commission that would deal with such issues, Kenyans expected that that would be dealt with and such challenges would be a thing of the past. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a pity that Kenyans continue to suffer even when there are reasons to compensate them. And, Honorable Speaker, in the compensation of the members in Ukunda airstrip, the compensation is not only limited to land. Over the time, when people are settled on land, they have a number of properties that they have invested in. Honorable Speaker, they have houses they built on the land. There are a number of items that are categorized as properties. And Honorable Speaker, I say this because there is a very big problem in Isiolo County for lack of compensation on what we call along the Horn of African Gateway project in Isiolo. That, Honorable Speaker, Kenha had engaged NLC to compensate the affected properties. But here is a case where the National Land Commission chooses to only compensate land of the people in Isiolo and leave their houses. And, Honorable Speaker, this is a pure act of indignifying the people of Isiolo. So, Honorable Speaker, coming back to the statement by Raphael Shemera, I want to support that the valuation must be done accordingly on the people that are affected by the expansion of Ukunda airstrip. The land that is going to be used for the expansion must be valued properly at the market rates. The property on this land must be valued, and property, Honorable Speaker, as I've said, is not only limited to the houses. Honorable Speaker, in Isiolo, we have a very funny case where a house is destroyed, half of it is compensated, and a half of it is left uncompensated. And there arises the question of inequality. So, Honorable Speaker, this situation is not only limited to the Ukunda airstrip. In Homa Bay, where I come from, there is an airstrip called Kabunde airstrip that is used in the region. Honorable Speaker, it has been over 10 years as we chase compensation by the Kenya Airports Authority for the Kabunde airstrip to be expanded for the use of the region. A number of us and a number of people in that region have to fly to Kisumu and connect to Homa Bay as far as Migori and to Tanzania, where we have a functional airstrip, although the runway is smaller and needs expansion. So, Honorable Speaker, the National Land Commission must come out to make proper the compensation of Ukunda airstrip so that the people may get what belongs to them. I support.
Senator Githuku.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimesimama kuunga mkono statement ya Mheshimiwa Chimera kuhusu watu wa Ukunda kwanza waweze kulipwa ridhaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuunga mkono kwamba wakati wote ambapo kutakuwa na miradi ambayo inachukuliwa na ama serikali inataka kufanya miradi sehemu ambayo imekaliwa na wananchi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni haki ya wananchi kuweza kulipwa fidia na serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka tu niseme kwamba kuna sehemu nyingi tofauti katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya ambazo wananchi wamekuwa affected na miradi ya serikali. Nikisimama hapa Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuongelea kuhusu watu wangu wa kaunti ya Lamu, ambapo Mheshimiwa Spika, pale mahali Lapset imekalia, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna wananchi wangu pale ambao wameathirika sana. Serikali haijawahi kuwalipa ridhaa, na nataka Mheshimiwa Spika kuungana na wenzangu kwamba hiyo ni mradi ambao ni wa serikali ambao utafaidi serikali ya Kenya, na haitakuwa mzuri Mheshimiwa Spika watu wadogo ama watu wachache kama wale watu wangu wa Lamu Mheshimiwa Spika waweze kuumia. Ndiposa Mheshimiwa Spika nasema kwamba kuna barabara ambayo imekatwa kutoka Lapset mahali imekalia kuelekea mpaka ile ambayo inaenda mpaka Southern Sudan ikipitia Isiolo. Mheshimiwa Spika, National Land Commission ilienda ika-identify wale watu ambao walikuwa wamekalia ile sehemu, na wakasema kwamba wamequalify kuweza kulipwa, na tangia siku hiyo ambapo walichukua hiyo maoni na kuweza ku-identify wale watu ambao ni affected, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawajawahi kulipwa. Nataka niungane na wenzangu niseme kwamba wale watu pia wanafaa kuingizwa katika listi ya kuweza kulipwa ridhaa na fidia ili waweze kujinufaisha na maisha yao yaweze kuendelea na waendelee kujivunia kuwa Wakenya. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono.
Senator Karungo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the statements, but more so on the issue of the disco matanga, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the objects of devolution is for counties to manage their own affairs. And that includes their cultures, the way of doing things, religion, and anything that concerns the society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the committee that is going to deal with this issue to look into that matter with that consideration in their mind, Mr. Speaker. But we also need to ask ourselves, why were they banned? In 2018, the same ban was effected in Kilifi County of disco matangas. In 2019, there was another ban of that kind in Homa Bay. And now this one in Kwale, I think in 2022, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the authority or when the Interior Department was banning these disco matangas, they cited unexpected pregnancies among the school-going children, because in these events there's discos, there's drinking, there's dancing, and it happens all the way to the morning from night, Mr. Speaker. And they give some reasons that it was affecting the 100% transition of students from primary school to secondary school because of unwanted pregnancies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Senator, as Senator Chimera said, instead of banning 100%, it should be somehow regulated, because if that's how they feel when sending the departed one, that's how they feel is the best way to celebrate, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it should be 100% ban. I think they should be controlled in a way, maybe hours, maybe time, and maybe those in attendance or those to attend such disco matangas. Maybe where I come from, Mr. Speaker, we might not have this, but I feel it is my mandate and the mandate of this Senate to defend other people's rights. I remember somebody was telling me that they even have competitions. Who had the biggest disco matanga in a certain area when they're sending, they're paying the last respects to their departed one, Mr. Speaker. So I believe instead of banning them, let the security be enhanced. Instead of banning them, let the authority or the government come up with measures to help that they make sure they reduce these engagements that make the children, these unwanted pregnancies. Even the parents themselves can just take care of their children. You don't have to let them attend such events. So, Mr. Speaker, I support that statement, and I believe the committee will come with the right recommendations. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Hamida Kibwana.
My statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to... Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding withholding value-added tax, VAT, obligations on petroleum products and its impact on businesses. In the statement, the committee should state the rationale for the current withholding VAT obligation on petroleum products, stating its impact on the profitability and sustainability of businesses in the petroleum sector. Number 2, provide an analysis of the impact of the 2% withholding VAT on the petroleum industry, particularly in terms of job losses and negative effects on the economy, stating how changes made by the Finance Act 2021 to the Tax Procedures Act 2015 affected the petroleum industry's ability to seek exemptions from withholding VAT obligations. Number 3, table evidence that supports the claim that removing the withholding VAT obligation on petroleum products will result in increased revenue from pay-as-you-earn, pay, corporate tax, and other revenues generated for county governments, stating alternative measures that could be considered to ease the financial burden on petroleum businesses. And number 4, state interventions put in place to ensure that the Finance Bill 2023 includes an amendment to exempt petroleum products from withholding VAT obligations, stating potential drawbacks, if any, and how this can be addressed. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chiranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have seen my sister, Senator Amida, has raised an issue of VAT. She's prophesizing because the Finance Bill 2023 is looking to increase VAT on fuel products from 8% to 15%. Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, the country is not doing very well economically, and there are two issues. Either we tax or we borrow. The budget ceiling, Mr. Speaker, as we talk, is around 9.4 trillion Kenya shillings. And the ceiling that this House, and then I voted during the handshake arrangement against, was 10 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. We are looking at a budget of 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. Our public debt is no longer sustainable. Therefore, the fact that 8% has been increased to 15% on VAT, Mr. Speaker, is very critical in the growth of the economy. We either choose to go to countries like Canada, Ethiopia, Ghana, Ethiopia, and other countries who have default in terms of payment, in terms of public debt that we have internationally, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of fuel subsidy. Who are these people? Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, there are many companies who are well connected that benefited from fuel subsidy. Mr. Speaker, who are the beneficiaries? Mr. Speaker, when you look, and I remember we censured as CS of Energy in the last session because of misuse and abuse of fuel subsidy, and then, Mr. Speaker, because what you are having is specific petrol stations who are selling fuel like a happy hour, Mr. Speaker, for people who add things more than water, and they were not in a position to tell us who are these, Mr. Speaker. As we talk today, there are many companies that want to be paid because they gave fuel subsidy, Mr. Speaker. That process was abused. Mr. Speaker, any sane economic person, the fuel and unga subsidy should be removed because it was not sustainable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it behooves all of us, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot survive on subsidy, Mr. Speaker. Look, for example, we better subsidize production over consumption. Because if you are talking about food security, for example, we better give farmers in Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, subsidized fertilizer to produce more of ndizi to be consumed in Nairobi, as opposed as giving unga that is subsidized, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this statement by Senator Amida, with all due respect, of course the committee will dispense with, but in my own opinion, fuel subsidy was abused, Mr. Speaker. The international economists, the IMF, everybody has said you cannot live on subsidy. It is like living on Fulisa. You cannot live on Fulisa, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when the finance bill, I would have wished to listen to the comments of Senator Amida when the finance bill will come before the floor of the House, because we need to raise our local revenue. We don't raise, we borrow more. We borrow more, the country, Mr. Speaker, will be sold reja like mitumba in some markets, Mr. Speaker. And we don't want, Mr. Speaker, to come here buying a loaf of bread, come with like 10 kilos of 100 shillings, Mr. Speaker, because our currency has been devalued, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think on a point of information, Mr. Speaker, Senator Amida is doing very well in many things, but I think on this one, I beg to disagree, because fuel subsidy has been abused, and the government under President William Ruto has done very well to remove any form of subsidy and cut down even on this budget, Mr. Speaker. I've seen, Mr. Speaker, in the conclusion, there are many, and I hate to reply these things, Mr. Speaker, because I've seen our colleagues from the other aisle in Disco Matangas. I'm told there's Disco Matanga. My younger brother, Senator Rafael Chimera, was there describing how Disco Matangas happens is in a better place, or birthday parties or baby showers. Mr. Speaker, we need to be honest to the country in conclusion. There is a misnomer that counties, their money was slashed, Mr. Speaker. In the financial year 2021-2022, for new members, we fought here. I remember Senator Faki was here, Senator Okongo Mugende was here. We fought and gave counties 370 billion. We have fought an increment of 15.3 billion addition, that is 385 billion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, counties will get conditional grants of 44 billion. Counties will get 429 billion in both equitable shareable revenue and in conditional grants, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask our colleagues, I know as politicians, when you see microphone and media, you decide to be excited, Mr. Speaker, simply because you want to please your crowd. But let us be honest, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Faki?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honorable Senator for Nandi is misleading the House in saying that the counties are going to get 425 billion. 425 billion in conditional grants, Mr. Speaker. What the DORA said, Mr. Speaker, is that the counties are going to share 385 billion, 425 million Kenya shillings. There was nothing like 425 billion in that DORA, which was passed by this House and assented by the President, I think 3 weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherangei.
Mr. Speaker,
are you misleading?
No, I'm not misleading, Mr. Speaker.
Factual?
It is as factual, Mr. Speaker, it is as factual as the second coming of Jesus Christ. Mr. Speaker, it is very important. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when we are in this forum, we learn. And I request we learn. I learn from colleagues, they learn from me. I said very well that the President, we ascended 385.3 billion under equitable shareable revenue. Under conditional grants, and with the law we passed here, Mr. Speaker, we passed 44 billion. It comes to 429 billion. Mr. Speaker, it is like having money in equity and KCB, it is your money. So I think Senator Faki, Mr. Speaker, should stop consulting Sergeant at Arms and listen keenly, Mr. Speaker, because I am making a life-changing statement so that they don't mislead the public in these Komatangas, Mr. Speaker. It is 429.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, that is going to counties. And I want to beg our colleagues, the answer will bear as witness. We can say other things for political expediency, but facts will remain as stubborn as it is, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise there and hope when this issue of VAT will come up, Mr. Speaker, I will want to also sit, because you remember, Mr. Speaker, I asked a question about fuel subsidy. Mr. Speaker, you saw the Daily Nation yesterday. 62 billion was lost. And among of it is under fuel subsidy. And the person who was making a lot of noise yesterday in Congress Course was the person who presided the loss of 62 billion. So since some of the side that are asking about VAT, they should be asking Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga where 62 billion that was meant on fuel subsidies, Mr. Speaker. We cannot lie to this country. I think the era of lies, Mr. Speaker, must stop, because 62 billion, Mr. Speaker, cannot be accounted, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Eddie?
Mr. Speaker, is Senator Cherargei in order to, I'm rising under Standing Order number 115. Is Cherargei, Senator, Honorable Member of Nandi, in order to verbatim call individuals' names as high as Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta in this House without a substantive motion, Mr. Speaker? Is he in order? You are discussing other people.
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 155 is something else. Mr. Speaker, when you see Standing Order 115, it talks about senators' bags. So I don't know whether he has seen Senator Amida's bag anywhere, or my sister
Senator Cherargei, just yes. Have your seat. Have your seat. Senator Eddie, have
Chair.
your seat. Have your seat, please. Just take your seat. You have made your point. You've made your point under Standing Order 115, which is not applicable under this instance, and therefore I proceed to overrule. Senator Omogeni, proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this statement that was raised by Senator Amida. But, Mr. Speaker, we should also not allow Senator Cherargei to mislead the House. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the money that was voted by this House to go to the counties is 385 billion as a shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker. The issue of conditional grant,